What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Thanks for clicking on another episode of Break the Silence. I am your host, Cyborg, and we just got done watching a dominant close win by the Detroit Pistons over the Denver Nuggets, 124-121. The reason I say it was dominant, even though it was only a 3-point game, is because the Detroit Pistons were up in this game 19.5 and up by 20 points in the third quarter. The Denver Nuggets made a roaring comeback there at the end to keep it close, but ultimately the Detroit Pistons held them off. This was a super impressive game because I'm someone that believes that the Denver Nuggets are a top 3 team in the NBA, and the Detroit Pistons had a great showing over them today. Before we get into it, make sure you take a second to subscribe to the channel. We're at almost 1,300 subscribers. We've been covering the NBA closely, especially all these trades that are happening. The Detroit Pistons are a team that made a trade today. The Pistons have been one of my favorite teams to watch this year, so if you're a Pistons fan, make sure to subscribe. And the Denver Nuggets, I have a long history covering them, so make sure you take a second to subscribe to the channel. So, ultimately, the Detroit Pistons are the 1 seed in the Eastern Conference, and I am ready to declare that the Eastern Conference runs through Detroit. I have watched them win impressive game after impressive game. They have the second best record in the NBA, right behind Oklahoma City Thunder, and they have everything it takes, in my opinion, to make a finals run, even though they are a fairly young team that doesn't have deep playoff experience. Last year, they had a very hard-fought series against the New York Knicks that went 7 games. And this year, I believe they can make that step forward into running all the way to the NBA Finals. We watched them the other night. They dominated the Boston Celtics. And tonight they played against, like I said, a team that I think is very impressive, has 2 All-Stars in Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic. And the way that they defended Nikola Jokic really was mind-blowing to me. So at halftime, Cade Cunningham in this game had 17 points and 7 assists. Duncan Robinson had 15 points, even though he was in foul trouble and kind of on a little bit of a, had to get pulled for a few minutes at the end of the half because he had 3 fouls. But what's so impressive about this team to me is the way that they play defense. Now, the Nuggets shot a ton of free throws in this game, and that's part of what the Detroit Pistons are going to do. They're number 1 in the league in blocks. They're number 1 in the league in steals. They're 3rd in the last 35 years for most blocks and steals combined. That is highly impressive, meaning they get their hands on a lot of basketballs. Their hands are all over balls. I wish I could have rephrased that, but their hands are all over the place, and it's highly impressive to watch them play defense. In doing so, they're going to foul you. They're going to make a lot of contact, but they're going to frustrate you. When you watch this game tonight, you could tell that the Denver Nuggets were frustrated. They were complaining to the refs. It was, and all NBA teams complain to the refs a lot, but I watch a lot of Nuggets basketball, and you could tell that they were frustrating. They were taking bad shots. They smoked a couple layups, but it's because of that physical, nasty nature that the Detroit Pistons play with that I think is so effective, and why I think that they're awful to play, especially at home where they're 21-5 after tonight's game. Tonight, they had 27 assists and 9 steals and 4 blocks. Like I said, the Nuggets shot 43 free throws, and they hit 37 of them. So if the Nuggets weren't scoring at the free throw line, it felt like they were really struggling to get baskets. They only shot 33% from 3. Now, where the Pistons kind of struggle to a degree is their 3-point shooting. They're not a very good 3-point shooting team. They haven't been all year, which is why today they went out and made a trade. They got rid of Jaden Ivey, who admittedly was a guy that I loved in the draft. Obviously, he tore his ACL. They've had some players step up in Detroit, and he just, didn't really live up to what we thought he was going to be. But they got rid of Jaden Ivey, and they brought back Kevin Huerter. Kevin Huerter's a very good 3-point shooter, so they clearly knew that that was a need of theirs in order to take that step that they wanted to take. Kevin Huerter hasn't shot great from 3 this year, but we know historically he's a very good 3-point shooter, and sometimes when guys are on bad teams, they can have stretches where they don't play their best basketball. But when they get on a team with a player like Cade Cunningham, who's going to distribute the basketball at a high level, tonight again had 10 assists, 29 points. And I love Cade because he plays on both ends of the court. He's one of my favorite players in the NBA, and I think he's easily cemented himself into the top 10 players in the entire league. And right now he's 4th as far as like Vegas betting odds in MVP running. And especially with, the Lakers Luka's 2, Shea's 1, it's either Shea, Luka, Jokic, or Shea, Jokic, Luka. But Jokic has missed a lot of games. So if he misses 2 more games, I believe he's ineligible for awards. Luka, their team's not super great in the Western Conference. We'll see what happens there. Obviously, Shea and the Thunder are a force to be reckoned with. They win a lot of basketball games, so they're going to easily finish number 1 in the West. But if Cade's number 1 in the East, he will absolutely be in that discussion for the most valuable player. One of the things that was so impressive to me tonight, well, 2 things that stood out. Ron Holland in the second quarter was playing great defense and getting down the court, and I was just highly impressed by all he was, the way he made his imprint on this game, even in limited minutes. He only played 15 minutes, but he had 7 points, 4 rebounds, a steal, and a block, and it felt like a lot of that was in the second quarter. The reason that I love this Pistons team is because of their second All-Star, Jalen Duren. Such a dominant big man that has really, I'm sure Pistons fans, a lot about him, but as far as coming on the NBA scene, wow, what a statement he's made. He had 19 points, 13 rebounds tonight, and the reason that that's significant is he was playing against Nikola Jokic, who is arguably the best player in the NBA, one of the top 5-6 centers in NBA history, and he held Jokic to 24 points on 9 of 19 shooting and only 4 assists with 5 turnovers. The way that the Detroit Pistons were playing defense on Nikola Jokic was something that I was really impressed with. Jokic does a lot of his work from the post. So, he's backing down, he's one, very tall, he's able to see everywhere, but he knows where his players are on the court, he's very smart. The Detroit Pistons many times had a guy come around the backside where Jokic was backing down, he's looking back this way, and had a guy come around and strip him. I saw it at least on 2 or 3 occasions. That's not something that normally happens to Jokic, who, like I said, is very careful with the basketball and very efficient. But I think it starts with having a very good big man in Duren, and then being able to bring in a scrappy big man in Isaiah Stewart and just cause so many problems. Stewart tonight had 11 points, 6 rebounds, and 3 assists. Again, a steal and a block in only 23 minutes. So when you're able to throw those bodies at a guy like Jokic, it's very difficult for him to work in the way that he wants to, and they really took him off of his spots. And we know what some of the other defenders for the Detroit Pistons represent in Asar Thompson. Cade Cunningham's a good defender. Duncan Robinson shot the crap out of the basketball tonight. Tobias Harris didn't have his best game, but he's a guy that can play on both ends of the court. Ron Holland defends at a high level. Karis LeVert off the bench is a good scorer. And Javonte Green played some minutes, but you're adding Kevin Huerter. So you're talking about a lineup that's going to go 9 or 10 men deep. And what's interesting tonight is that they were running both Isaiah Stewart and Jalen Duren on the court at the same time. The Nuggets on the other end were running Valanciunas and Jokic. So it's a little different basketball than what we normally see in the modern NBA, where, primarily teams, are trying to go smaller and smaller and smaller, except the Jazz, who just traded for Jaren Jackson Jr. That was pretty interesting. But these two teams have the ability to go big. They have the ability to go small, because when you are the Pistons and you have, Cade, Asar, Duncan Robinson, Tobias Harris, and Jalen Duren, you're playing. Tobias Harris can slide into that 4 spot, and Asar Thompson can guard, a ton of positions on the court. So you can only play with that one big man, and that's really effective in the modern NBA. Well, if you have the ability to throw it up and switch it up with Isaiah Stewart on the court, that's going to be very interesting, especially in the playoffs if you run into a team like the Cleveland Cavaliers, who might play with 2 big men in Evan Mobley and Jared Allen, if neither of those guys get traded here in the next day and a half, and the New York Knicks, who play with Cat and Mitchell Robinson. So having that versatility to be able to play with 1 big man or 2 big men on the court at the same time, I think can be something that will be really valuable depending on who these teams, or depending on who the Pistons play in the Eastern Conference playoffs this year. You look at some of their competition, the New York Knicks have been such an up and down basketball team. The Boston Celtics made a trade today for Nikola Vucevic. That'll be kind of interesting. More than anything, if Tatum doesn't come back for the Boston Celtics, then I don't look at them as a real threat. And the Eastern Conference feels like it's the Pistons to have. And then over there in the West, that's when you got to worry about, is there a chance that Victor Wembanyama were to make the NBA Finals? Or could you play this Nuggets team? Both of those teams are very effective, but the Thunder are a team that has a ton of depth. And the Pistons feel like a squad that can throw a lot of guys at you. And so I think the way that they'll be able to match up against the Thunder will be very interesting. They're a team that was not good for a long time, but they stockpiled a ton of assets. And they just kept building their squad. They didn't make any crazy moves, which I'm a big fan of. A lot of teams try to make some splash move. For instance, the Minnesota Timberwolves, they had Anthony Edwards. He started to show what he was capable of, and they traded so much for Rudy Gobert. And I just don't think that that works. I don't think that's the way that you build your team. You're rushing it. You allow a guy like Cade Cunningham, in my opinion, to develop, and you allow him to, gain some of that playoff experience before you make moves on the margins to really go for it. And that's what the Thunder have done. They didn't make any huge splash trades. They traded for Alex Caruso, Josh Giddey. They got a ton of assets around Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and they're a powerhouse. The Detroit Pistons are going to be a force to be reckoned with for a long time. Cade's averaging 25 points and 10 assists. 10 assists is the most in the NBA and 6 rebounds, and he's highly efficient. He's 6'6", 220, so he's just big, broad, plays really good on the defensive end of the court. And that's something that I talk about with the Pistons is a lot of our star guards, our Steph Currys, our Luka Doncic's, aren't very good on the defensive end of the court. But Cade Cunningham has that ability to play both ways because he's so big and he's so physical. And then on the offensive end of the court, he's so in control. If you're the Nuggets, I'm not too concerned about the loss tonight. Jamal Murray played well. Jokic is still coming back, obviously, from, I think it was only his 3rd game back from his injury. So if you're the Nuggets, I'm not having any big panic attacks. You just played the Thunder a couple nights ago. That game didn't go your way. And you played the Pistons, 2 of the best teams in the NBA. You lost those games. That's all right. But you got to turn it around. We're coming up on the All-Star break, and it's going to be hugely important how you play the second half of the season, especially once you get Aaron Gordon back and Cam Thomas. So all in all, an exciting basketball game, but I'm very highly impressed by the Detroit Pistons and what they represent. And the fact that I think that this team will come out of the Eastern Conference, barring any huge trades, which we'll see, or any huge injuries for the Pistons. All that is TBD. Make sure you take a second to subscribe to the channel. Appreciate everybody watching. Cyborg out.